Have you ever wondered why a single night out can leave you feeling like you've run a marathon without moving an inch? It's not that introverts don't care about people. It's that every interaction is an investment of energy. For some, a crowd is fuel. For others, it's a storm their mind must navigate. For many introverts, socializing is not simply a matter of being present with other people. It is an exchange of attention, of presence, of emotional energy. And just like any system of exchange, there is a cost involved. To understand why socializing can feel exhausting for an introvert, you have to step inside the way their mind works when they are interacting with the outside world. Imagine the mind as a finely tuned instrument, sensitive to subtle changes in tone, pitch, and rhythm. An introvert's mental wiring is often more attuned to these subtleties. While someone else might hear only the melody of a conversation, an introvert hears every variation in tone, notices the pauses, detects the unspoken feelings behind the words. Their attention naturally scans for meaning beyond what is said, and their brain begins processing layers of information simultaneously. This isn't a conscious choice. The brain of an introvert is constantly filtering, analyzing, and connecting dots in real time. And here lies the first part of the energy economy. The very act of paying attention at this level requires significant neural resources, each detail processed, each emotional nuance noted, each mental connection made. It all draws from the same pool of mental energy. This is not energy that can be endlessly replenished during the interaction itself. Once it's spent, the mind needs recovery time. Think of the introvert's mental energy like a battery designed for high-precision work. It's not built for constant output at maximum capacity. It's built for deep, sustained focus in shorter bursts. Socializing, especially in group settings, demands constant switching of focus. Different people, different topics, different emotional tones. Every time the focus shifts, the brain recalibrates. That recalibration process, repeated over and over, quietly depletes mental reserves. This explains why an introvert can feel completely fine before entering a social space, only to find themselves drained halfway through. It's not that they suddenly dislike the people they're with, or that they lack interest in the conversation. It's that their brain has already burned through the energy allocated for this kind of high engagement processing. For an extrovert, socializing can generate energy because their neural reward systems light up with the stimulation of interaction. For an introvert, the same stimulation can quickly lead to overstretching the mind's capacity. It's also important to understand that introverts often approach social situations with an internal awareness of their energy budget. They sense that their focus and engagement are valuable resources, so they may unconsciously ration them. This can appear as quietness or withdrawal, but in truth, it's more like strategic conservation. By engaging selectively, they're ensuring they don't completely deplete themselves before they can naturally recharge. On top of this, the energy economy of the introvert's mind is impacted by the environment. The louder, busier, and more unpredictable the setting, the more energy is required to simply remain grounded in the moment. The brain must filter out background noise, adjust to lighting, navigate subtle physical discomforts, and maintain social awareness, all while participating in conversations. It's a constant balancing act between outer stimuli and inner processing. Another layer of this dynamic comes from the introvert's natural tendency towards self-monitoring. While they engage in social interactions, they're often simultaneously observing themselves. How am I coming across? Am I listening well enough? Did I choose the right words? This internal commentary isn't necessarily anxiety. It's part of the deep processing pattern. But maintaining that self-awareness while also tracking the flow of conversation and responding in real time consumes even more mental bandwidth. There is also the matter of transitions. Introverts often need time to mentally shift from one mode of being to another. Moving from solitude or focused work into a socially charged environment is not instantaneous. The mind needs time to recalibrate from internal reflection to external engagement. Without that transitional space, the energy cost of the shift itself can make the interaction feel more draining than it otherwise would. This is why many introverts describe feeling mentally full after a certain point in a social setting. Just as a computer can slow down when too many programs are running, the introvert's mind begins to signal that processing capacity is nearing its limit. Continuing to engage deeply at that point can lead to mental fatigue, which may feel like a sudden drop in enthusiasm, attention, or patience. In this sense, the exhaustion isn't purely emotional, it's physiological. The brain uses glucose and oxygen to function, and high levels of sustained attention can deplete these resources quickly. Neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin play a role in motivation and mood, and when their levels dip after extended focus, the sense of mental depletion becomes even more pronounced. So, when we talk about the energy economy of the introvert's mind, we're really talking about a highly sensitive, highly capable system that operates at its best when used intentionally. Socializing is not inherently negative for an introvert. It's simply an activity that comes with a significant energy price tag. And the more they understand the way their own mind spends and replenishes that energy, the more gracefully they can navigate the world without burning out when an introvert steps into a social environment. It's not just the people they encounter, it's the entire sensory landscape that begins to press against their awareness. Every space has its own sound, rhythm, and emotional temperature, and the introvert's nervous system is finely tuned to pick up on these details. This heightened sensitivity is not a flaw. It's a deeply ingrained feature of how their brain processes the world. But that very sensitivity also makes them more susceptible to overstimulation. The overstimulation effect begins with sensory input. Picture walking into a room where multiple conversations are happening at once. Music plays faintly in the background, someone's laughter cuts through the air, and lights from above cast subtle glare on the tables. For some, this is barely noticeable, a backdrop to the main event. For the introvert, however, all of these layers arrive in high resolution. The mind doesn't just ignore them, it absorbs them. The brain is constantly scanning, categorizing, and prioritizing what's relevant and what's not. But when so many signals arrive simultaneously, the processing load skyrockets. This is because introverts often have a more reactive reticular activating system, the part of the brainstem responsible for filtering incoming sensory data. While an extrovert's system might quickly dampen irrelevant stimuli, and introverts can stay more open, letting in more information at once. That means their attention is divided across a wider field, which quickly demands more energy. Every sound, movement, and change in tone becomes another item to track. The environment itself starts to compete for as much attention as the conversation in front of them. Then comes the emotional layer. Social situations are not just about exchanging words, they're about reading faces, gestures, and subtle cues. For an introvert, the emotional undercurrent of a group is like a second soundtrack playing alongside the physical noise. If one person in the room is upset, they can feel that shift in energy. If there's tension between two people, even if it's unspoken, they sense it. This emotional sensitivity is a gift. It allows for deeper empathy and connection. But it also multiplies the amount of data being processed in any given moment. When the nervous system is flooded with both sensory and emotional input, it enters a state of high alert. This is not the kind of fight or flight reaction that comes from danger, but rather a sustained readiness to respond, adapt, and engage. The problem is that this readiness is costly. The body releases more cortisol to manage the heightened state, the heart rate can subtly increase, and the brain stays locked in a pattern of rapid fire assessment. Over time, this constant vigilance becomes exhausting, even if nothing particularly stressful has happened. There's also the unpredictability factor. Many social situations unfold in ways that cannot be controlled. Someone new enters the conversation with a different energy. The music volume changes. A group suddenly shifts topics in a direction that requires mental catching up. For the introvert, each change is like another adjustment the brain must make, reorienting focus, recalibrating expectations, and deciding on an appropriate response. Each of these micro adjustments, though small individually, accumulate in the body and mind. Another overlooked aspect of the overstimulation effect is time compression. In highly stimulating environments, the introvert's perception of time can shift. What feels like an hour to others may feel like several to them because of the sheer density of input they've processed. This creates a kind of mental fatigue that is disproportionate to the actual clock time spent socializing. It's why an introvert might leave a gathering feeling as though they've been on for far longer than they have. The overstimulation is not always external. It can be internal as well. In social situations, introverts often run a parallel track of inner thought alongside the outer conversation. They are thinking about the topic, considering deeper implications, forming measured responses, and sometimes even rehearsing how they'll phrase their next sentence. This internal dialogue is rich, but when paired with an already stimulating environment, it can lead to mental overload. The mind ends up processing both the outer world and the inner world at the same time, doubling the cognitive demand. Physical cues of overstimulation begin to appear when the brain reaches a threshold. It might start with subtle signs, difficulty focusing on a single conversation, a sense of impatience, or a rising desire to retreat to a quieter space. The body may begin to feel heavier, breathing patterns shift, and even posture can change as energy levels drop. At this point, it's not about willpower, it's a neurological saturation point where the system is simply too full to continue processing at the same intensity. Recovery from overstimulation requires more than just stepping away for a few minutes. The nervous system needs space to downshift from that high alert state. This is why solitude or a quieter setting feels so restorative for introverts. It's not just about being alone. It's about allowing the mind to release its grip on the constant flow of incoming signals. Without that release, the mental clutter can linger long after the social event has ended, creating a kind of overstimulation hangover where the introvert still feels mentally occupied by the sensory and emotional echoes of the interaction. What makes the overstimulation effect particularly challenging is that it can happen even during positive, enjoyable social experiences. An introvert might genuinely enjoy the company of the people they're with, appreciate the conversation, and feel connected, and yet still reach a point of depletion simply because of the sustained sensory and emotional input. This can create confusion or even guilt, as if feeling drained means they didn't truly value the interaction. In reality, it's simply the nature of how their brain processes the world around them. One of the most defining traits of an introvert's inner world is the depth of their mental processing. For them, a conversation is never just a conversation. Words are not simply heard and answered. They are absorbed, examined, and often connected to a much wider network of thoughts, memories, and emotions. This depth of processing is not something they can easily switch off. It is the default setting of their mind, and while it allows them to engage with people and ideas in a profoundly meaningful way, it also carries a hidden cost. When an introvert is engaged in a social exchange, they are not merely reacting to the immediate moment. Their mind is running multiple layers of analysis at once. As they listen to someone speak, they are considering the choice of words, the tone of voice, the emotional state of the speaker, and even the potential motivations behind what's being said. If the topic is complex, their thoughts begin to branch out, pulling in related concepts, comparing the information to past experiences, and weighing it against their values or beliefs. This is not a conscious attempt to overcomplicate things. It's how their brain seeks understanding. This depth of thinking means that even a simple question can lead them down intricate mental pathways. Ask an introvert how their week has been, and while they may respond with a straightforward good or busy, internally they might be replaying specific events, noting how they felt during those moments, and evaluating what those feelings say about their current state of life. Their answer is distilled from a much larger process of reflection, which takes time and energy. The deep processing mindset also extends to how they formulate responses. An introvert rarely blurts out the first thought that comes to mind. They are more likely to pause, sift through their thoughts, and choose their words carefully to match both their intended meaning and the tone of the conversation. While this creates a sense of intentionality and precision, it also adds to the mental workload. Each sentence spoken is the result of a mini-editing process happening in real time. In group settings, this depth can become even more demanding. While others may jump quickly from one topic to another, the introvert's mind may still be processing the first topic when the conversation has already moved on. They might be reflecting on the implications of what was said, or quietly considering how it connects to something they've read or experienced. This can create a feeling of lag, as if they are running a different race on a parallel track. And because they don't want to disrupt the flow, they often keep their deeper observations to themselves, further increasing the amount of unexpressed mental content they are holding. Emotional nuance plays a major role in deep processing. Introverts are often attuned to micro-expressions and subtle changes in body language that others overlook. A fleeting look of discomfort, a slight hesitation in a response, or a shift in tone can spark a whole internal analysis about what might be going on beneath the surface. This is not about judgment, it's about understanding. They naturally seek to grasp the full picture of a person's experience, which requires pulling together visible and invisible pieces of information. The challenge is that this kind of mental engagement doesn't happen in isolation from the rest of the sensory and emotional input in the environment. While they are diving deep into one aspect of the conversation, they are still absorbing background details, maintaining awareness of social dynamics, and managing their own self-presentation. It's like trying to read an intricate novel while also keeping an ear on multiple conversations happening in the same room. Because their mind operates in this layered way, socializing can become mentally taxing much faster for an introvert than for someone who processes more at the surface level. Each conversation feels richer, denser, and more demanding. The energy cost isn't just in speaking or listening. It's in the unseen cognitive work of interpreting, connecting, and evaluating every element of the exchange. Even small talk, which is often assumed to be easy, can feel exhausting if it triggers this deeper mental engagement without providing the emotional or intellectual reward that usually makes such effort worthwhile. This depth of processing also means that social interactions rarely end when the moment ends. Introverts often replay conversations in their minds afterward, revisiting what was said, considering alternate responses, or reflecting on how the exchange made them feel. This post-event analysis can stretch out the energy drain long after the actual interaction has finished. It is part of their natural process of integrating experiences, but it also means that the mental impact of socializing lingers. In many ways, the deep processing mindset is a double-edged sword. On one side, it enables meaningful connection, insightful conversation, and a genuine appreciation for the complexities of human interaction. On the other, it places a constant demand on mental resources, which can lead to fatigue if there is no balance between engagement and recovery. The mind is always working, always sorting, always trying to make sense of the moment in a way that feels complete. And while this creates richness in life, it also ensures that even the simplest social encounter carries far more weight than it might for someone whose processing style is more immediate and surface level. For the introvert, solitude is not merely the absence of people. It is the presence of something vital. It is the environment in which their nervous system can finally exhale, their mind can return to its natural rhythm, and their energy stores can begin to refill. To someone who thrives on constant external stimulation, this need for solitude can seem puzzling, even antisocial. But for the introvert, it is not a luxury, it is an essential biological and psychological reset. Without it, they risk operating in a state of continuous depletion. After prolonged social engagement, the introvert's mind has been managing a high volume of sensory, emotional, and cognitive input. This is not unlike a computer running multiple complex programs at once. Eventually, the system slows and its performance suffers. Solitude works like closing those programs, allowing the mental processor to cool down and focus on its most essential functions. In this space, there is no need to track social cues, maintain self-presentation, or manage competing sources of information. The brain can finally devote its resources inward, attending to personal thoughts, emotions, and ideas without interference. On a physiological level, solitude allows the nervous system to shift from a sympathetic state, the fight or flight readiness that can be triggered by overstimulation, to a parasympathetic state where rest, digestion, and repair occur. The heart rate slows, breathing deepens, and cortisol levels gradually decrease. This is not just a feeling of being relaxed. It is a measurable change in the body's state, one that directly supports mental clarity and emotional balance. During these periods of solitude, the introvert's mind engages in a different kind of processing. Instead of reacting to the rapid flow of external stimuli, it can now engage in integrative reflection, sorting through recent experiences, consolidating memories, and making meaning from what has happened. This is often when insights arise, not because the introvert is forcing themselves to think deeply, but because the quiet creates space for deeper layers of thought to emerge naturally. The mind, freed from constant reaction, can follow its own rhythm of exploration. Creativity also flourishes in solitude for this very reason. Without the mental noise of ongoing interaction, the introvert's natural curiosity and imagination have room to expand. Thoughts can connect in unexpected ways, and ideas that were half formed during social moments can fully develop. For many introverts, some of their most valuable contributions to the world come not from being constantly present in social spaces, but from the depth of thought and creation that emerges in the quiet afterward. There is also an emotional dimension to this recovery process. Socializing often requires an introvert to match or adapt to the emotional energy of others. Even in positive situations, this emotional alignment can be tiring as it involves constant calibration. Responding with empathy, moderating one's tone, or adjusting one's mood to maintain harmony. In solitude, there is no such demand. The introvert can return to their own emotional baseline, feeling their own feelings without the subtle influence of others' emotional states. Importantly, solitude for an introvert is not synonymous with isolation. It is not a withdrawal from life or a rejection of relationships. It is an intentional return to a personal sanctuary. The difference is in the purpose. Solitude is about replenishing, not hiding. It is an active engagement with one's inner world rather than a passive absence from the outer one. In this sense, it is as essential to their well-being as sleep or nutrition. Without it, they may still function, but over time their clarity, patience, and capacity for connection begin to diminish. The environment in which solitude takes place also matters. For some introverts, recovery comes most naturally in stillness, reading in a quiet room, journaling, or simply sitting in silence. For others, it may involve solitary activities that engage the body but free the mind, such as walking in nature, painting, or tending to a personal project. What matters is not the activity itself, but that it allows the mind to operate without the constant pull of external demands. Technology adds another layer to this conversation. Even when physically alone, digital communication can replicate some of the same demands as in-person interaction. Messages, notifications, and online conversations keep the mind in a state of responsiveness. True solitude for the introvert often requires stepping back not just from people in the room, but from the ongoing flow of digital engagement. It is in the genuine quiet, where there is nothing to respond to, that the deepest recovery occurs. Over time, introverts often develop a natural rhythm of social engagement and solitude, though it may not always align with the expectations of those around them. They may enjoy being with people, but their enjoyment is balanced by an acute awareness of their internal energy levels. When those levels begin to dip, solitude becomes non-negotiable. It is the place where the scattered pieces of their attention are gathered, where overstimulated senses can rest, and where the mental and emotional reservoirs are filled again in preparation for the next wave of outward connection. For many introverts, the challenge of socializing is not simply the amount of interaction, but the nature of it. When a social situation is filled with surface-level exchanges, constant noise, or conversations that feel disconnected from their values, the energy drain is almost inevitable. Yet, when the setting, the people, and the topic align with who they are at their core, the dynamic changes completely. Socializing becomes less of a performance and more of a natural expression. The difference lies in alignment, when what they are doing externally resonates with what they feel internally. Alignment begins with authenticity. Introverts often struggle when they feel they must put on a mask to fit in, adapt their personality to match the group, or suppress parts of themselves to be accepted. This constant self-monitoring creates a sense of dissonance between their inner world and outer behavior. Every moment spent managing that dissonance costs energy, but when they are in an environment where they can speak freely, express genuine thoughts, and be met with understanding, the pressure of self-adjustment disappears. They no longer have to calculate every response. Instead, their words flow from a place of truth, and that flow is inherently less draining. The type of connection also plays a significant role. Introverts often crave depth in conversation. They are drawn to discussions that explore ideas, meaning, and personal experiences rather than a rapid series of superficial exchanges. This is not because they are incapable of small talk, but because their minds are wired to seek significance in their interactions. When the conversation engages their curiosity or passion, they are not just talking. They are participating in a shared exploration. This kind of engagement doesn't feel like a drain on their mental reserves. In many cases, it can even feel like it replenishes them. Shared values and mutual respect create another layer of alignment. If an introvert is surrounded by people whose priorities and ethics are at odds with their own, they may find themselves mentally navigating disagreements, biting back responses, or internally questioning the point of the interaction. This silent negotiation burns energy quickly, but in the presence of those whose values align with theirs, the mental environment becomes calmer and more cooperative. There is no need to defend, persuade, or retreat. There is simply space to connect without conflict. The physical environment is also part of alignment. Introverts may find that they thrive in smaller gatherings or quieter spaces where the sensory input is manageable. Soft lighting, comfortable seating, and minimal background noise allow them to focus on the people in front of them rather than expending energy to filter out distractions. When the environment itself supports connection, their nervous system stays in a more relaxed state, making it easier to remain present without fatigue. Purpose is perhaps the most overlooked element of aligned socializing. When an introvert feels there is a meaningful reason for their presence, whether it's to support a friend, collaborate on a shared goal, or contribute to a cause they care about, the interaction becomes more than just another demand on their time. It becomes part of something they value. Purpose transforms the experience from an obligation into an opportunity, which shifts the emotional weight entirely. Even within aligned settings, introverts still manage their energy carefully. They might engage deeply for a period, then step away for a quiet moment before returning. These micro breaks are not signs of disinterest. They are a way of ensuring that the quality of their engagement remains high. The beauty of aligned socializing is that these boundaries are often understood and respected, especially among people who value them for who they are rather than for how constantly available they can be. Another important aspect of alignment is pacing. Some social situations move at a speed that forces rapid topic changes, quick decisions, and little time for thoughtful contribution. For an introvert, this pace can feel like running uphill while trying to hold onto all the details. But when the pace slows enough for them to process, reflect, and respond fully, their contributions often carry greater depth and insight. This slower rhythm supports their natural cognitive style and reduces the sense of being mentally overextended. The energy shift in aligned socializing is not about suddenly becoming an extrovert or gaining unlimited stamina. Instead, it is about removing the friction points that normally drain energy, masking, filtering, defending, or struggling to keep up with overstimulation. When these points of friction are reduced, the mental and emotional effort required to participate drops significantly. What remains is the kind of interaction that feels nourishing rather than depleting. Over time, recognizing the patterns of alignment allows introverts to make more intentional choices about where and how they invest their social energy. They begin to see that the exhaustion they feel is not proof that they are incapable of enjoying people, but rather a sign that the setting or connection was out of sync with their nature. By seeking out spaces, people, and conversations that resonate with their authentic self, they create conditions in which socializing stops being a constant withdrawal from their inner reserves and instead becomes a balanced exchange that leaves them feeling enriched rather than emptied. Socializing feels exhausting for introverts not because they dislike people, but because their minds and bodies process the world in a fundamentally different way. Their energy economy is finely balanced, with each interaction drawing from a limited reserve of mental focus and emotional bandwidth. Overstimulation floods their senses and nervous system with more input than can be comfortably managed, while their deep processing mindset ensures that every conversation is layered with meaning, reflection, and analysis. Without time to recover, the cumulative effect of these demands leads to depletion. Solitude becomes their sanctuary, not an escape from life, but a place where their system can reset, their thoughts can settle, and their emotional balance can be restored. And when they find environments, people, and conversations that truly align with who they are, socializing shifts from a performance into an authentic exchange. In those moments, connection is not a cost, but a shared experience that sustains them, reminding us that introversion is not a weakness, but a different and equally valuable way of engaging with the world.